Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Power Driven Podcast. Today, we're in a new location. We're out in the shop in front of our stuff because we wanted more area to bring Griffin here. And anyway, today's going to be a fun day because we're talking about myth. We're myth busting today.
So we're talking shop in the shop.
Yeah, shop in the shop is going to be good.
Perfect.
And we're going to get rid of all the false stories out there. We're going to drop the knowledge. Everything you ever wanted to know, we're going to tell you today. Right, Meyer?
So does Bigfoot exist? Is that the myth we're talking about?
That was Will.
Yes,
Will save that for the
It
end.
may
Okay.
come up. We're also going to talk about Area 51, diesels, why they smoke, all kinds of cool stuff.
Nessie.
Nessie,
Nessie. Nice.
our underwater ally, don't you forget.
Little pulley in there.
We actually
No.
did a little poll
Stop
on
it.
our Instagram, say what myths or misconceptions rather you guys want to know the answers to. And we got a couple of good responses. We kind of had our own internal myths. And we're going to start with Myers. Meyer had the very first one. He's very passionate about.
Dude, I don't know why I'm so passionate about this. It's just I was preached to it from a young age of diesel industry, and it just never made sense in my brain. And then now as I've grown in the diesel knowledge, I guess I'm yeah, no, that was stupid from the very beginning. It was stupid.
And what is stupid?
So it is dual feeding a P pump.
Ah.
Now you start getting massive pumps, whatever. Sure, you're making over 2,000 horse.
So really quick, we got to get
Whatever.
a little context. P pump, we're talking 94 to 98
Every time I
Dodge.
mention any technical thing, you always stop me and tell me
Because not everybody knows
94,
what a
90
poverty pump is, all right?
It happens. It's fine. No, so yeah, your 94 to 98 12 valves with the inline injection pump on the side of the motor. If you're a sled puller making 2,000 horsepower, yes, dual feeding it. That means you're feeding the pump from both the front and the rear. You're trying to get 2 points of entry for your fuel going into that P pump so you can then inject it. On your 300 horsepower daily driver, you don't need that. And not only do you not need it, it's something that people buy, and I get it, you want to feel cool doing that stuff. But the problem I see with it is that you, in factory form, you're feeding the rear of the pump and you're returning out the front of the pump. That means 100% of your fuel or whatever doesn't get injected is traveling the full length of the pump, collecting your cavitation, collecting heat, and then it's sending it back to the tank. When you dual feed your pump, you're taking the front plug out of the front of the pump,
Which is right next to where the return feed
which is in the same exact galley as where the return is. So half of your fuel is just bypassing the whole, it's short circuiting the whole pump. It's not collecting heat. It's not collecting cavitation. It's collecting nothing.
Yeah, on right behind me here is the Cummins cart, and it's got a 14 millimeter pump on it. And I actually feed the front and return out the rear.
That's what I was going to say is if you, let's just say you want to be a little special, you want to do something different, even if you're making 300 horse, I don't even care. If you want to do something different, what I would recommend is you take that front 18 millimeter plug out the front of the pump and feed the front. And that way you're not feeding through an M14 hole where you're kind of restricted down to a 5/16 orifice. You can feed a M18 hole. That's how Uncle Rico is. You're feeding an M18. You got a nice 3/8 inch or so hole, and then you return out the back of the pump. So that way, again, same factory form where it's going the full length, but now you're able to feed it a little bit better.
The downside is that fitting is really close to the timing case. So on a street truck, depending if you're running a steel or an aluminum fitting, it's kind of hard to get a wrench on there and tighten that feed.
It is, but you also have a -10 feed, so not a lot of people have that. But it's possible, especially if you're normal people running a 3/8 inch or -8 if you're really crazy.
So does dual feeding add power?
Pressure.
We've never done that test.
Yeah.
Okay, well, not to bring this back to the junker drag truck.
There it is.
That took long and time.
It's been 5 minutes.
I used to dual feed the front port of the junker drag truck. Now I had 3 lift pumps on there. So I had 2 of them in series feeding in the traditional, and then I had a toggle switch for my Walbro 392 high pressure pump that I fed in the front. And when I turned on the Walbro, I went faster mile per hour and lower ET at the track.
My logic is you're splitting off the fuel and half of it's getting short-circuited. You are just adding another source. That's not fair. That's my logic.
But I did add power dual feeding, right?
Oh my gosh, you were waiting that
fuel
whole
pressure though.
Yes.
The fuel pressure had gone up.
And then it would take it from 60s to a little over 100. And I think it picked up 4 mile an hour.
Shocker. It picked up power. Now, something else to a lot of people don't know what the insides of a pump looks like. When you're feeding the pump, I get it. A lot of people think it's black magic in there. No, there's 6 little galleys where the plunger sits, the little cup galley area, and each of those galleys is connected with a 5/8 inch hole. Your fuel line is the restriction, not whatever is inside the pump. So, yeah. I'm passionate about that one because from the very first time I saw it, and I was like, oh, that sounds so cool. I was the kind of guy that would want to do that.
I did it. I was like, heck
and
yeah,
then I was like, That just doesn't make sense to me. I was like, would you like, if this is an engine, would you feed like split off the coolant and like feed it right next to the thermostat? No. Sounds like a great way to overheat it.
So yes, dual feeding, proper plumbing important. Dual feeding not necessarily needed. Really not needed at all. I've never needed it, but I do have a good water or fuel pump.
I mean, I get like, let's just say your sled puller, massive Sigma, whatever pump, and you're running 2-10s or whatever. You just need that flow
quantity.
But I haven't yet to see it.
Yeah. All right. Next thing, I want to move on because we've got lots of topics to cover about. This is one you hear a lot about, and I like this one. Myth is more boost always equals more power.
Always. Yeah. But Dyno would agree with that 100% of the time.
100% of the time. So I'm going to say in any combination of engine, you have the engine together, you have your intercooler, it is built. If you can add boost efficiently, you will always pick up power.
Your engine's built.
You have the camshaft.
I can change turbos?
It just adds boost. So efficiently,
I can change a turbo and increase boost and lose power. I guarantee it.
I said efficiently.
Oh, well, that's
and
you
whatever.
Yes, so that would not be efficiently. If you change turbos and
going into
boost,
this conversation, I told everyone I wanted a little red button that says wrong.
I will hit the wrong button on you. Guarantee
So
you.
if you restrict it to the same turbo
No.
and you increase boost, can you increase boost to the point of losing power?
Yes.
Because you'll get into a drive pressure issue and then
There will be a peak and then there will be a fall off.
So
you're changing this is not about turbos. This is just boost. So I maintain if you can add the boost efficiently, you will pick up power by adding boost always.
So if you make a change and it increases boost efficiently, you pick up power. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean that is true because anything that doesn't agree with you, you say, "Oh, that wasn't efficient."
Exactly. Prove me wrong.
I already know it's coming. I don't have anything. I know I agree.
That sounds like when that guy tested that air intake horn and like, your test must be wrong. That's why it didn't add power.
Yeah, something like that.
It is. I mean, boost. I mean, okay.
And you said your intercooler was built. Yeah.
I'm just going, and I think it's drive pressure kind of falls into that because I know when we were doing good times, you guys were playing with boost and the boost was way high on it because you guys were seeing 200, weren't you, if I remember right? And you weren't picking up power. We actually started dropping boost and picking up power because we were getting rid of drive pressure, if I remember right.
I don't think we picked up power by
No.
dropping boost.
Yeah.
I think we maybe done it for reliability.
I was going to say false bear beats Battlestar Galactica. That's where I was going.
I could be very wrong on that.
We were trying to pick up reliability. Now, people in the industry told us if we gated that and let it breathe, it would make more power. It did not.
Everybody said, you know, 150 pounds of boost is the most you'll ever need. Like, that's the magic. Any more than that, you're not picking up power. And I'm like, mathematically, this doesn't make sense. Like, I can run the numbers and I can't compute. But obviously, I have not made as much power as these people in the industry are telling me. But just take it to its logical conclusion. If any boost, like, why is there a limit? Why does pressurizing air have a limit? It doesn't.
No.
Heat. I mean, you do get some
if you
heat in
efficiently
there.
do it, yes. Like,
Yes.
there's all kinds of ways
If you
to
have
take care of
intercoolers
heat.
and stuff like we did.
Right.
I mean, I'll say an example where dropping boost did not hurt very much power. On my race truck, Uncle Rico, it's a 12 valve with a 6.7 crank, so it's a 6.1 stroker. It has a 115 millimeter custom GT55 feeding a 72 millimeter, a 472. If I let that go with the wastegate shut as tight as it'll go, it'll make at low altitude like 150 pounds of boost. On our dyno, higher altitude makes about 135. If we open the wastegate and vent to atmosphere, it'll drop the boost 10, 15 PSI. I'll only lose 25 horsepower, but my EGT will go up 100 EGT. So it's cooler running all the boost, but it's like I don't get a proportional loss of horsepower for proportional drop of boost.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I was at 100 pounds and pulled 25 away, I would lose a ton. But once I'm already making, a lot of boost, it seems like it's kind of inefficient and hot. It doesn't penalize me as much to gate some of that, slow the turbos down, and keep my boots from seeing 1,000-degree intake temps that apparently even power-driven boots, if you put 1,000 degrees on them repeatedly
They
and
blow.
150 pounds boost, eventually you can make them fatigue and the silicone turns white and it started black. That's how I knew it was a heat problem.
Oh boy. I
And the Kevlar inside, that Nomex lining, it was all like melded and singed. It's like firefighter stuff, firefighter material. Yeah.
It was a little warm. A little warm.
No moss. Yeah, which like we've done a lot of turbo testing and stuff, and like a rule of thumb I found, like you're talking about wastegates, is if you can open up your wastegate and drop drive pressure 2 to 1. So let's just say you drop 5 pounds of boost, you drop 10 pounds of drive. That is a net even. You won't generally lose any power from that. If you lose 5 pounds of boost but 8 pounds of drive, you're going to lose power. You got less airflow going through. Likewise, if you drop it, 10 pounds of drive pressure but only 2 pounds of boost, you're going to pick up power. And so that's a good rule of thumb. But that comes to like being efficient. Yeah, if you're just closing wastegates and tightening it all up and making it so the turbos are not being efficient anymore, it's holding back the engine. It's not letting air flow through the motor. Yeah, it's inefficient.
But
that's
I will
why Todd
say,
will always win that argument.
in our testing with like a wideband air fuel gauge, we found that as you crank the boost up, it gets leaner, meaning more oxygen is making it in the cylinder, but the pumping losses of pushing out against all that exhaust that's in the system is
negative
where
horsepower.
You're making enough negative there that you're not gaining. But based on the AFR, we are getting more oxygen molecules into the cylinder.
Mm-hmm. And so that's an interesting thought process as well. I mean, we should probably get after this topic, but like it's something to think about. Like when you're just trying to take a combo and make as much power as possible, yeah, you're going to close the gates to wherever you can get them peak about power. You are on the limit of your block. I mean, you could split that block today if you wanted, just drive it wrong or turn it up or whatever.
Not since I sleeved it. It's got magical sleeves.
These are the magical.
Okay,
and
well,
it has magic
the other
block
5
filler.
engines, the other 5 engines you could have split. And so like if you said you opened up your gates and you lost 25 horsepower, like only 25, there's probably another 25 horsepower worth of negative horsepower that from pumping loss and everything else that the engine's having to create just to push all that out. So that block is only having to hold 50 less horsepower. It's a great change. It's a good reliability increase, unproportional to what horsepower you actually dropped.
I'd agree. Yeah.
Anyway,
I'll allow it.
Thanks.
So this isn't really a myth, but it was a question like, how much boost for horsepower? Is there a ratio? Like, I mean, a lot of times in 12-valve world, it's kind of 10 to 1. 10 to 1. Yeah. Every pound of
When
boost is 10.
Ported head and cams and stuff seems to ruin that. But you get a stockish motor
and they're so similar on airflow, stock, and cam that it's like it is a good rule of thumb. People think that's bogus, but
it's
because
a ballpark.
The engines are so similar, the only difference is what turbo system is producing the boost.
Mm-hmm.
But like on a stock turbo, you can make a really good map of boost versus power, assuming you're at the same timing. That's the other little variable there, where it'd be pretty dang accurate.
On the Godfather, one time we went to that ATS dyno,
that gauntlet challenge.
Yeah, the gauntlet challenge, and we had something wrong with either the wastegate setting or something, and
the MS timed out.
Yeah, that's what it was. And so I made 1,000 horsepower, and it was 30 pounds of boost on that.
This gate's wide open.
Yeah,
yeah.
So if you have enough turbo and RPM, it definitely makes a difference. Also,
an intercooler and
engine platforms, like that is not the case on the 6-liter Power Stroke. We talk a lot about that. Like those things make way better than your 10 to 1 rule.
Yeah.
I mean, what are those things, like 25, 30 pounds of boost is like what you're going to get. And those are probably 500 horsepower, maybe 36 to 500 horsepower, 36 pounds of boost.
Pretty typically, yeah. I mean, really, they don't push most of them, they don't even push over 30 pounds on a single turbo.
And a 12 out of 35 pounds might make 300 horse on our dyno.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the 6.0s rev higher, so more RPM. I mean, if a 6.0 versus a 5.9 12, you used to have similar displacement, but you have 2 more holes in a V8.
Right.
So it's just moves it through much faster.
Their head flows way better too. They flow like 160 CFM and they have 8 cylinders doing that.
Yeah.
12-valve flows like 135, 140 and only has 6 cylinders.
Right. So way better head flow than.
And 7.3s though are more like a 12-valve side of things. Like 7.3s to make 500 horsepower is like 50,
really,
60 pounds.
So
they make like 50 pounds of boost is what
they've
most
got
people
this
say.
ginormous head and they've got these tiny little valves tucked in there. The 6-liter has bigger valves than a 7.3. Go figure that one out.
Yeah.
Well, not overall size, because you have 2 valves per cylinder rather than 4 valves per cylinder. So you technically have more. The valve is
area,
bigger, but the valve
more
area on a
square
6.0
inches of valves
is much bigger on a 6.0. But yeah, 7.3s they have terrible flowing heads, so that's part of the reason why they have to you basically just got to shove all the boost into them to make them so they'll make any power.
Yeah, which is a stock valve, a stock headed 12 valves, the same thing. The head flow is so terrible. I mean, that's why compounds shine on them so well. They need the pressure.
Yep.
Common rails change. They have a lot better, even 24 valves. The flow's way higher.
A lot better head flow. They
Is
can
that,
make
do you still
power.
think it's a 10-to-1 on a common rail? Or do you think
No,
it's way
it's
better now?
better than that. I don't know if I've come up with a good logic on like number for that, but it's, I don't know, probably if I had to guess, like
Probably
12,
15, right?
12,
aren't
14.
You,
I mean,
pretty
are you making 1,500 horse at 100 pounds of boost?
Yeah, but Todd was like, once you start talking massive cams and head and everything, you throw everything off. But like for a more stockish motor, I mean, yeah, 20. I mean, my shorty was at like darn near 20-to-1. Like
when you did the 480 test, when we had the stock head before we swapped heads, you had a cam, sure.
I did have a cam. I don't remember any of the boost numbers. I think I was like running around 45, 50 and making like 1,000. And that's, you know, it's a built engine. And on the last engine, the compounds were same thing, like 62 pounds of boost, 1,200-ish horse. So yeah, I guess on a good built common rail, you're talking like 20-to-1. You start talking like a stock one, like a
So we're
stock
talking
turbo.
20 horsepower per 1 pound of boost.
I'm not that high on my tow truck, Ruby. I'm right at 1,500 horsepower, and that's probably around 100 pounds of boost, 105.
And that's what's funny is you make 105. My race truck makes like 95, 100, and I
more
make
power.
another 300 horse. And so it's huge
I'll
just with
bet you that
turbos.
has to do with the manifold charge.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. You're choking up, but
Mhm.
like it drives so nice. What you
Wait,
can do.
your
Yeah.
race truck makes 300 more horsepower than his street truck?
Yes.
How much more horsepower does your race truck make than his street truck? Because that's your tow truck. So your street tow truck makes
I
11.
think then you should have you should like account for how many times my tow truck has towed his tow truck though. Like that should get factored in somewhere.
There's not wrong.
Your race truck might make like 700 more than his tow truck,
It probably
where his race truck only makes 300 more than your tow truck.
On our dyno, I think you've made like 600 more. Yeah.
Yeah, probably so.
I'm just curious. The 6.0 makes 1,500 horsepower. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
The tow truck. Yeah, tow truck.
Right.
I was talking about dailies, not what you drive when it's hot and you need AC.
Not what you drive when it's broken again.
It's not. It
It's been
drives
great,
super nice.
man. You guys stop being a hater, okay?
It's
It works.
It's had its
All right,
issues,
we
but
need
it's
a new
amazing.
topic. This is
All
getting
right.
boring.
So
Sorry, guys.
Can I do my next one? This is one
Go
I
for
get
it.
asked every day.
Yeah, let's see. You get
215 pumps, do they advance timing or retard it?
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
my gosh.
I like
Question.
I'll be honest, this made the cut because I like put my career on the line this weekend on a Facebook forum. No, people and like not hating on anyone, but there's so much rumor going around about that. And it started from so early. And I started to believe it at first. And I was like looking at it, I'm like looking at the size of the spill port in the plunger and where the spill port would have to seal. And I like started getting the nitty-gritty. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way that's where it lives. And so yeah. Ultimately, if you just use a couple brain cells and understand how it works,
a couple brain cells. Dang,
that's
Myra.
for all you
So-
pump builders out there that disagree.
I mean, I hate to reel this back, but let's just start with a basic concept of what's going on. There's a plunger moving up and down. When it covers a hole in the side of the little barrel that it's moving in, it starts injecting the fuel.
It's like a two-stroke where it has a whole port on the side of the cylinder and the piston like covers it up.
And when
And
it covers it up, that's when it
that's-
starts making compression, or that's when it starts
Because the
injecting.
spill port just reduces or relieves pressure. When you cover up, now pressure has to go somewhere else.
And then the pressure goes out the line. And so the top of the plunger is not flat. It's got this little
On-
valley.
Yeah,
but
on
it's a
any
valley.
other plunger.
It starts with two plateaus and it goes down in a valley.
Only 215 pumps.
Only
Yeah.
215. And so a lot of people think that at idle, it's on this plateau. And then they think as you give it a little throttle, it twists the barrel and now it's injecting in the valley, which means it retards timing because it's got to rise further. But what they don't know is it idles in the valley. It can't inject any fuel on the lower plateau area. So it starts in the valley, and as you throttle or the plunger turns with your throttle, it starts going up a ramp. And as the ramp or the plateau gets taller, it theoretically will cover the spill port earlier because the plunger moves up and down. And so it advances the timing.
Mhm.
There's no retard possible.
So always, and this was actually a question that I honestly do have. So does it retard timing? So with a factory fuel plate 215 pump, do they retard timing?
At below idle, it could inject a smidge at a more advanced state. So let's just say you have a timing set to factory, whatever, 13 degrees. At a very like super light throttle, it could start injecting at like 15 or something like that. But in factory form, when you're driving down the road, it's in the valley and it actually hitting the fuel plate, it never gets out of that valley. It's static timing.
It doesn't even advance it with a factory fuel plate, so it doesn't let the throttle
So
go
that
enough.
is just another example how Cummins was looking out for us. Like they're like, they don't know it yet, but
They're
they
like,
will
this
love
is a factory race pump, and these guys don't even know
Once
it.
he says fuel plate, they're like, whoa, this is
Yeah.
way better.
So they don't retard timing then
No.
at all, like never basically.
And you can't physically do it because there's not enough meat on the plunger itself because the spill port is so big in diameter. It's like, what, a 180 thousandths or 165,000. I can't remember the exact number between a 12 and a 13, but there's almost not enough room to even inject fuel if it's back on that lower or that further back plateau before the valley. It can't even inject fuel. I mean, just barely.
Yeah.
It's not, and so it'd be below idle. So
It's
no,
like,
you
yes.
can never retard timing with it. You can only
And
advance.
yeah, it's another thing. Like all pump shops or anyone worth their salt, when they spill port time and set the timing on your pump, if they know what they're doing, they're setting it in that valley, which is so they're setting at the absolute lowest point it could be. So if they're setting it at 18, that means that you're 18 in that valley. When you give it throttle, it's going up.
Okay.
And how many degrees can it advance? I mean, obviously, it's how you set the pump up.
Yeah, it's how you build it and how maxed it is. But like a generic base maxed one, you're getting like, let's just say factory pump, you're putting a fuel plate or taking the fuel plate out or whatever, you're getting around 5 degrees. In order to get the full 7, you need to max the pump and like get it professionally calibrated.
And that's what the Rico has, is a full 7 degrees. So your
7
base timing is what,
smidge.
30-ish?
When I'm doing nitrous, 30, 35 before I had put better governor springs is where I was making max power. We're going to have to do some further testing. It might like more than 35 degrees now that it
That's
doesn't
fuel.
pull fuel
35
back
base.
at 35
And
base.
it's bumping up from there, yeah.
So I'm at 30 base now. So I'm basically 37.
That full rack.
And since we're on a P pump subject, I think this is a good time. So 215 pumps are only 12 mils. Everything else is not.
No.
False.
Yeah.
False, wrong.
All pickup truck pumps from the factory were 12 mil. Now there were some 8.3 liter pumps that were 11 millimeter, even smaller.
And the F700s had 11 mils.
Yeah, the 12 valves. There's 12 valves that had them too.
Mhm.
The only reason
Factory race pump.
I mean, this is usually a daily question. Is like, oh, I got a 12 mil pump. Cool. So did every single pickup truck that was ever put on the road. So, what year of pickup truck do we got here? So I can kind of figure out what we got.
So you can tell in the data tag, that data tag from Bosch, it says PESP R because it's right hand RS. If it says 1200, it's 12 mil. If it says 1100, it's 11 mil. That's what the 12 is for. It's actually 120. So
And then
just how it is. But so it's 110 or 120. 120 is the 12 millimeter, and the
so that leads us into the
boy.
next P pump question.
We're
This
just
is actually a very good myth one for me. All P pumps are the same.
No, they're not. Definitely not.
definitely not. No.
As you can tell, we've kind of led into this conversation very much. So that is a question we get a lot too. Is that they'll call and they'll go, "Well, it's an inline pump." Yeah, I understand.
Cool.
There's many different versions of those
And
P
that's
pumps.
always sad when somebody's like, "Oh, I'm going to buy this sweet, cheap 12 valve for an engine swap, and I got this generator, real cheap deal." Like, yeah, you don't have a pump that's it's not an auto gov. There's auto gov, there's ag gov, there's all kind of different things. They work differently. Like an engine built to go on a tractor or a generator does not have the same requirements as an automotive application. So if you find a good cheap generator engine, your pump is likely going to need substantial. May not even. I mean, we wouldn't even don't even send it here. Like we're not going to rework
Yeah, it would take so many parts.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Well,
and
and
it's
you
not
have,
a good core pump. If you I got send it as a core, we don't want it. So I mean, there are many different variations of P pumps out there. And for you guys out there looking for your own, you want an auto governor. Something from a Dodge truck would be your ideal way to go.
because there's 11 mils. There's constant pressure delivery valves on
No,
those
there's ag
that you can
governors.
get. Ag
There's
governors.
all of it.
You can get the MW pumps. A lot of people buy them thinking that they're getting a P pump, and they got not a P pump because it's in line.
Yeah.
So just something to look out for.
There's a lot of different kinds.
Good myth to go and bust on that one, I think.
Yeah.
Another myth here is, well, that's not a myth, but I mean, it's very hard or impossible to start an engine with high timing. High timing is hard to start.
A lot of people are scared of high timing for
They
sure.
are.
We
Lots of
live
people
in
are scared of
Cedar
it.
City, Utah, where it gets down to, I mean, it's not crazy, but -10 in the winter, 0 to -10, depending on the winter or what time, whatever. And yeah, I daily drove 24 degrees and without a grid heater, no problems. It's great.
Yeah, so you just got to decide what high timing is. It does make a difference.
It makes a difference for
like
sure.
in the race truck, like, you know, if I'm at 42 degrees, I'll try to drop it down to the base timing, which I have in my truck at 33 degrees to start it. And while it's still difficult, it's much easier to start at 33 degrees than it is at 42 degrees. And the wet stack's less, which, you know, a lot of people don't know what that means, but
Yeah.
when it's cold, it does make a difference. It is better to have a little bit less timing.
Yeah. I would think that I think a lot of people are scared of it back in the day because high timing was also low compression. Like you had this built motor, you ran lots of timing and you ran low compression. And now you have this motor that's terrible to start, runs like crap. And you're like, it's all that timing. No, it's your compression.
Yeah, I think compression
makes
bigger
more
deal.
difference.
I mean, that was a big deal. If you blew a head gasket back in the day, where it's like, oh, you need to put a 20 or 40 over head gasket on there because you milled your head 3/1000ths to make it flat. And you didn't really change the compression at all. And so, I mean, the tiny bit from the valve recession depth loss, but I mean, we're talking like 0.25% of compression. It's nothing.
And then you put a 10,000 head gasket on it. All of a sudden, you lost lots of compression point to do that. Well, not a lot, but you lost.
And I tested those on the junker, and you know what? It didn't seal better with the 10 overhead gasket than the regular one. I was
did
like,
notice,
there's more to crush there. No.
Yeah, I tried that a long time ago because I thought, this is a good trick for big power. It just made it a little bit lazier. I mean, it made the same power, but it was a little bit noticeable in the spool up and the throttle response. And so, yeah,
kind of cold starting with high timing.
Yeah. And so like that was a very minimal change in compression. Then when you go to a big change, like pistons that really drop your compression, you're going to notice it. You're going to feel the throttle response. You're going to feel the stuff. Now, it may make your engine more reliable, big power, like sled pullers for sure. If you're making big boost. I mean, I kind of have mixed feelings about that anymore. My engines are now more like stock compression, even the Cummins car, it's stock compression. But yeah, it's definitely, you're going to notice it for sure, the lower compression.
I mean, I'm going to ask this genuinely, actually. So do you think different vehicles are different for timing? Because and just an example, I'm going to go to my Fummins. My Fummins, no grid heater, nothing. And I actually did a cold start video on it when it was 18 degrees here, no grid heater. And I mean, 10 seconds, maybe 5-10 seconds of cranking, starts right up, no problem. My RV, which is also 12 valve, factory injector, factory everything, just has doesn't even have injectors in it. It has factory injectors, 18 degrees of timing. And I had to crank on it. Last time I started it was nearly 30 seconds and it was 40 degrees outside. No grid heaters. They didn't come with them.
Difference in motor, compression.
Everything.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I mean, I did that and I have another one that I've had to start too. And it's also, it gets a little rough. I'm going to say
anytime you have to crank a 12 valve for 30 seconds, something's wrong.
I've noticed especially in some of when you start building your engine, you get an aftermarket bigger cam in there, like a Colt Stage 3 or a Hamilton 188 220. I noticed the engine cranks over faster, has less trapped compression at
okay.
Yeah, and so it's like it's not like my starter got 10% stronger. It's trapping less air in there because the overlap, and so it's harder to start with the bigger cam. It's just yeah.
Yeah, and I asked that because I get people that like they'll call in and be like, "Oh man, I just can't get mine to start at 18 degrees," and I'm one that it starts right over. Like it doesn't have any problem cranking. So
yeah. All right, let's move on. This is another one we've talked about before, but it is a question. Drive pressure. Excessive drive pressure blows head gaskets. Myth or truth?
The truth. Well, as I said last time, drive pressure is generally followed with torque. You have a drive pressure heavy setup, you have a torquey setup because tight housings is what makes torque and tight housings is what makes drive pressure. And so those are two unrelated things, but they go hand in hand.
Yes, the drive pressure is minimal compared to the pressure that head gasket sees from combustion.
Mm-hmm. Especially like your 12 valves where you're sitting at your 20 degrees of timing at 1700 RPM, like the pre-detonation that's happening in the cylinder, just slapping that head gasket up or head up, trying to blow the gasket it's a lot.
Yeah, so you've probably seen out there, it's probably been said, but no, drive pressure itself is not the killer. Like Meyer said, it's the torque that often comes with drive pressure. That's the thing that kills it. That's the cylinder pressure. Cylinder pressure is what kills head gaskets, not drive pressure.
Yeah.
I think it's the cold air, like that blows head gaskets. So when you have cold air, like when a Yeti gets under your hood or like a Sasquatch, I think that's what blows the head gasket. I think it like puts cold air under there and You're just like, you're such a dummy.
Would you say it's dense cold air or just cold air? Like, will I put Banks intake horn on my truck. Will I blow it up?
Yes.
That's a question here.
Unrelated.
That's a question here.
That is a question?
Air intake horns.
Will it blow up your truck? Or do they want to know if they add power?
Yeah, stock versus cast versus the dual.
Okay, so let me dumb this down for people. I own a flow bench and I've tested air horns. A stock air horn will move over 1,000 CFM if you put like a nice radius, inlet on it. If you run it with just the hard edges on it, yeah, it's in that like 700 CFM range. The stock head per cylinder at a time moves 145 CFM. A good ported race head, you're in like the mid 200s. So the stock air horn far outflows your head. So no, the air horn is not going to add power. I don't care what anybody's
here would be
says.
the rebuttal to that, and I'm not making it, just would be the rebuttal. Okay, so an engine doesn't consume one valve worth at a time. 100, let's say like
140 times 6, it's 840.
840 CFM. What about 200 CFM head?
200.
Like
well,
our tow port 24 valve has
I'm
200
not going to
CFM.
put that in a
So
calculator.
1200 CFM, right?
So if you think it's consuming more than only one cylinder is ingesting at a time.
He's rebutting your rebuttal.
And what
There's
happens?
6 cylinders and they're spaced 60 degrees apart. The intake
understand.
stroke, I guess.
You're going to have 4 strokes and 6 cylinders.
You just got to do the math. You could say, okay, if I'm turning this engine at this much RPM, it's consuming this much CFM. So at what point does the air horn become a restriction? If the engine is consuming, let's just say you can turn enough RPM to, move physical size of the engine 1,500 CFM. That's a lot. I know. I'm just saying. At that point, and you're doing it because it's simply RPM. Would the air horn be a restriction?
Yes.
It would.
I think if you could turn enough RPM, you could do it.
So it's really an RPM thing. Just like when you hit big RPM, you have bigger runners in your cylinder head. Your ports are bigger. Everything gets bigger with RPM.
So
wish I had a button.
Yeah, so I agree with you. If you are running, let's say 8,000 RPM on your Cummins,
What happened to the
your
Mach limit?
factory air horn is absolutely restriction, and you should be running a
Banks air
pick
horn.
your brand. I'm not going to call out Banks or BD
Or anybody.
or Arc Flow or ATS or Pusher.
Name them all. Let's just
How
name
many
them all.
more can we think of air intakes? It's an easy part to bolt on. Worley Custom Fab makes them. I mean, everybody made them back in the day.
So I'm gonna take this another
I might
approach.
make one because they're a beautiful dress up part on your hood, and that's my opinion. That's what they are. They're a dress up
All
part.
right, Mar, go.
So I'm gonna go at it from a different thing. We're talking about CFM. There's a very important distinction when it comes to CFM, and that is not necessarily the CFM, but like the volume of air moved per minute. Because CFM, my intake on my race truck, it's a 6-inch intake, right? I need that 6 inches. If I put that through a 3-inch intake, it would neuter the power on that stupid thing. Now I have a 3-inch charge pipe going from my intercooler to my head. That's not a restriction because that air is not at atmospheric pressure. It's at 100 pounds.
I would say that's a bigger restriction than the intake horn. Your whole intake track at 3-inch absolutely is a restriction.
Well, I'm saying like
You would pick up power going to 3.5, in my opinion.
I did. Thank you. I mean, I didn't pick up power yet. I'm saying like I did swap to 3.5, but my point is like you can't just look at
back-to-back
you
test
can't
we're gonna
look at
get?
1,000 CFM and try to compare that to compare that flow bench data to what's going into your motor. You can't just say like your Godfather and you do the math with 200 pounds a minute. I mean, 200 pounds of boost, the
It's
RPM.
not 1,000 CFM going into your engine. It might be 3,000 CFM going into your 1,000 CFM engine.
Exactly. And you got to distinct those when you measure it. If you measure your intake horn just at an atmospheric pressure and then try to do the math of how much pressurized air is going into your engine and try to
But the
compute
engine
that.
is still
The
consuming
engine's still
1,000
assuming
CFM.
the same CFM.
It's
just a denser charge.
That's
So when you're calculating
Yes,
the CFM of
sorry.
the engine, it's based on the RPM.
right. You can't
and the
use pounds
volumetric
per minute to
efficiency.
calculate how much air is moving through your intake horn. You
Yeah.
have to use CFM. Right. My bad. But point being is like you got to make sure you translate that when you go to your Superflow flow bench data to an engine. You can't
It's
just
not
use
measuring
pounds per minute.
It's measuring cubic feet per minute. CFM.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's just you can't just take those numbers and directly correlate it to your engine. because it's not the same. It's not in the same environment. On the flow bench, it's at atmospheric pressure. On your engine, it's at 30, 40, 100, 120, whatever pounds of boost. It's not the same.
But you could take that superflow and take it to, negative 5,000 feet, and it would still flow 1,000 CFM. It's just the atmosphere. It's just the pressure it sees. And so it's almost irrelevant. I mean, it's not. I get your point, and I agree with it. But I mean, you could take that flow bench right there and put it anywhere in the atmosphere, or put any density around it. You could put that in a turbocharged environment. We could pressurize this building to 100 psi, and it still moves 1,000 CFM.
Let me try to say this a different way.
Okay.
I know we're on the same page.
Okay.
We've talked about this before.
Okay.
If you say my engine moves 50 pounds per minute, and then you try to shove 50 pounds per minute through that intake horn on a flow bench at atmospheric pressure, you're going to see pressure drops across your intake horn that it will never see in real life.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So if you did the math like that, you're doing it wrong.
When certain individuals market their air horns, they turn it into pounds per minute because they measure the weight of the air.
Sure.
And that's how they're trying to justify why you need more airflow, because they're saying your engine's consuming X amount of pounds per minute. They're not talking about the volume, they're talking about the weight of air. And the weight of air goes up with boost. And so it's not fair to compare how much weight of air you need to process at atmospheric pressure versus how much weight of air you process at 100 pounds of boost.
Yeah. And so then my last topic on this will be really quick. On my race truck, I had a stock intake horn. Again, 1,800 horsepower, stock intake horn.
Wait, 1,800 horsepower on a stock air horn?
I put pressure sensors on our dyno. We have a bunch of pressure sensors, and I put one in the shelf and one in the pipe before the intake horn. Before and after the intake horn.
Before and after the intake horn.
And I data logged a 0.8 PSI drop across the intake horn at 100 pounds of boost. So if you did an intake horn.
So just less than 1/10 of 1%?
That'd be 1%. A little less than 1%.
0.8.
0.8.
Yes.
No,
so
0.08. 0.8 PSI?
1 PSI would be 1% of 100.
Sorry, I'm dumb.
Okay. Anyway, continuing on. So 1,800 horse. If I were to put an intake horn on that, I would at best pick up 0.8%. Like it would get rid of all the restriction. Perfect world. It would get rid of 0.8%. Well, then I ended up blowing my head gasket. So I swapped out, pulled the head off. I did a little grinding to the shelf to help smooth the airflow going in. Just kind of doing a little mod there because it's a 6.7 head. So it has a little shelf right there. I also put an aftermarket intake horn from a company that is very well established in making intake horns. And I redata logged it with those two changes. And that 0.8% went to 0.7%. So the question,
going from stock to a big horn went from 0.8 to 0.1, and you did a little bit of mod
to 0.7.
from 0.8 to 0.7.
So 0.1% pressure drop. But I also did a mod to the shelf, and who knows which one that is. But my logic there is 18. So what's 0.1% of 1,800? That is the most I could have picked up with an intake horn.
And what did that math out to?
1.8 horsepower?
Yeah.
So 2 horsepower.
I think there's many better spent other places, unless you're looking for a show part.
Because it's totally fine.
It looked great. It was polished.
They're great.
But, I mean, we've considered producing an intake horn simply because so many people ask for them, and they're beautiful. Yeah. Not going to lie.
They could never sell when it's a performance part.
And the reason I swapped out
myself.
The reason I swapped out that stock intake horn is because the flange was starting to crack off of it. I had JB welded the flange on at the track, just trying to make it so it wouldn't leak boost. And I was like, I should probably swap this out.
Yeah,
so for me, it was a good upgrade.
We did build an air horn. We had them for the compounds for a little bit. So
yeah,
we had made Cobra Kais,
but we just made that to look good and
change boot angles, made it so it was straight.
All right, let's get to something really controversial.
Oh boy, that wasn't controversial.
This is going to be worse. I guarantee. And the reason this is worse is we don't truly know the answer. We can only conjecture what we believe.
Ooh.
I keep seeing videos for these amazing things. The speed of air pistons. Oh. Controversy. Here we go. I haven't seen negative. I did see one guy had a common rail and he had it idling and it was quite hazy. And I thought the guys were going to hate on it, be like, oh man, that's awesome. I'm like, dude, that's hazier than my truck. So I believe the claim is
everything's better. Everything's better power under the curve, better economy, and because I don't think they market a horsepower increase, just like area under the curve, like better torque.
Yeah.
Better throttle response.
How are they getting the efficiency claims they're gaining without making more power with the same?
My question would be, has anybody ever seen them on an actual dyno? All the data I've seen has been like secondhand, some big Caterpillar dealership or someone had less oil change intervals were better.
Which is, yeah.
My main problem with that is they changed two things.
Yep.
The first thing they changed was the design of the piston. Okay, they put some dimples at the top, and it's supposedly engineered well. I can't debate yes, yay or nay on that. I don't see in my own mind how that's like going to make a huge difference, but I don't know the engineering, so I'm going to say that's fine. The second thing they did was they put in gapless rings. Like, well, I can see how that could definitely affect the contaminants in the oil.
Because we've back-to-back test gapless rings, and the oil is
better,
way cleaner and better.
Yeah.
Wagler did that test with them as well. Like, same thing. Like, we're not the only ones.
Blow-by went down. They were measuring crankcase pressure.
And they picked up power under the curve. Their 1,000 horse test was the same, but their 600 horse test was better.
Yeah, that's what we learned from Wagler at PRI is they said the gapless ring did not show as much. The benefit substantially decreased or almost went away when they went over 1,000 horsepower. On a 600 horsepower build, the gapless second ring picked up power, decreased blow-by. So at some point, the gapless ring in their testing, which is limited, we're talking one engine here, it did not help once they got big power.
And so I don't discount the data that they receive from these dealerships. I just would really love a real test that, the thing they're advertising, which is, the remarkable thing is their machining of the piston top. They put a coating on it, which is fairly common. Coatings have been around for a long time, but they say their special dimpling makes all this difference. I'm like, man, with the two main changes there, the rings I could say would account for most of the stuff. I've seen those changes with piston rings. And I would love to do a test for guys, but the reality is I need a GoFundMe account to do that because those pistons are spendy boys.
$4,000. They're more expensive than a set of forged race pistons, like one-off race pistons. Yeah, and they're cast regular Cummins or Molly. I don't know where they're getting their pistons. They look like kind of generic Molly pistons.
If I ever did like a test, like seriously, I have to get a GoFundMe thing. I'd want to test them versus like McBee.
And I think Ruby,
which is
Ruby would be an awesome test because it's already got gapless rings in it. Like it would be a test that you could have. You have so much data on that truck, and you have mileage as poor as it is. You got all the mileage data. You could put that in there so easy and go, this is what it did different,
better or worse. It's just hard for me to think that's going to make a difference if the ring package is the same.
There's a few top-level pro stock head porting companies that have tried dimpling the ports, and we're talking like legitimate professional that's not like a rice rocket shop, because a couple of them started doing dimples and claim they're gaining, and who knows what they were actually doing. They said definitely not a gain. They measured a loss, but it was so close to even they couldn't even say for sure it lost flow and fuel performance on how well it keeps the fuel vaporized. But they said it definitely wasn't a gain, so they're not doing it. But they said they honestly said it was like a small loss when they found dimpling ports. And like there's programs right in the Rottler CNC. I can say, hey, dimple this port, and it'll go put those little pock marks through there. And
no one's seen a change.
I was excited to try it when I found out it was in the programming. And then after doing more research, I'm like,
But dimpling a port and dimpling the top of the piston are not the same. No. So I can't say it's an apples to apples comparison, but the cost is crazy because what's a set of like a McBee piston go for? Now we've made big power with McBee pistons. I don't love the ring package for big power stuff.
Yeah,
but the pistons themselves are fine.
Yeah,
not for huge power, not like custom pistons of like sub 1,000 horsepower and under. I have no problem with McBee.
And not only that, Josh is running higher than that on McBee ones, and they all equally failed. He had all the brands pretty much in his engine at one time because he was having problems, and they all broke. So what's better than the other?
But what's like a cost McBee piston? Like what's the retail?
You're $700. Oh, 12 valve. You're $400 for a set of McBee pistons.
I would love that.
Set of 6. And that's piston rings, pins, circlips.
Yeah, that's everything.
Now it'd be more. So the test I want to do is a set of McBee $400 pistons, and let's bring in the gapless rings, and then do the speed of air.
That's adding maybe $300.
So we have a $700 set of pistons versus a $4,000 set of pistons, and let's really see that. That's a test I would love to do. Maybe someday I'll do it if there's enough interest. But my gosh, $4,000 for a set of like cast pistons is just like I can't even imagine spending that kind of money on those things.
It's big money. It's hard to go like
but
that.
I see people out there excited about them, and I'm like, man. But I for one have seen no data that convinces me that the machining is the culprit or the benefactor rather than just the ring package you're offering.
Let's say they get 1% thermal efficiency from their coating, and they're getting 2 or 3% from the gapless ring setup, which in the short term it's proven. I know back in the day when guys were trying gapless rings, they were not putting them on street trucks going over 100,000 miles because they thought that small ring would, fail, would fatigue, and it just wasn't as robust, which is why I suspect the big OEMs have not done gapless on a lot of their Caterpillars and things like that.
And now that Total Seal has gotten that keystone ring for that top ring, the second one, maybe. I don't know. I'd be just super curious.
But I mean, yours is still in there, so to me,
great.
but I wish I had gapless rings in my truck just because I'd like the oil to stay clean longer. But
So anyway, guys, like I say, this is controversial because we don't have the answer. I just see stuff on my feed every often about it. Now, I guess I've seen one that have a steel piston out apparently, which is great. Machine the 5.9 steel piston's cool. I just I can't in my mind, because you've even said before, if this technology is proven, it'll be bought by Caterpillar or Cummins or Detroit Diesel, because you pick up any mileage in these big over the road stuff, you're going to sell a ton of motors.
And even the conspiracy theory people that believe in these 100-mile per gallon carburetor that the oil companies bought up and tucked away the technology. Well, that speed of air technology is out there, and I'm sure if someone came with $100 million and threw it in their face, they'd be like, "Yeah, take it." So it's not like it just disappeared either. It's still there. So it's not like it's been bought up and hidden away. So the oil conspiracy, man.
I think really if you're talking about 1 mile a gallon, which is what they always they're talking about mileage improvements, you would definitely see that. I mean, a semi truck to pick up a
that's
mile
over
a gallon,
10%.
yeah, that's amazing. So that's been always the hard part, and we get asked that actually quite a lot.
People call
about the speed of air, speed of air pistons, and it's just my problem is that everyone's like, yeah, I put it, the ones that I have talked to, we put it in our engine and it helped. And I'm like, okay, well, how worn out was your engine though? Are we starting with an engine that is completely wore out and you put new pistons into it and magically everything works better? Yeah, I sure hope it does. I hope that if you fix your engine, it's going to work better. Yeah. That's why it would be that would definitely have to be a test that you'd have to start with an engine that's great and then go to an engine that is going back to the same engine.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do that test.
So anyway, what do you guys think out there in the world? Speed of air, is it the blessing that they can claim it is, or is it I don't want to say it's snake oil or nothing, but in my mind, I just think it's the rings. But anyway, we should move on because we got other things to talk about. So, what else we got here?
Water to air versus air to air intercooler
versus air to air intercooler. I'm a big fan of water to air intercoolers as far as power production. They do add a big level of complexity. They do add some extra weight compared to an air to air. They remove, if it's sized appropriately, they remove a lot more heat.
Oh, yeah.
For one, you're starting with a cooling medium that is way cooler. So the way you rate an efficiency of an intercooler is how much heat it removes relative to the temperature of the cooling medium. So if you're starting off with an 80-degree day of air, like it's 80 degrees outside or 100 degrees outside, it'll never be as good as if you're starting with 45-degree air. That's the nice thing about water to air. You throw ice in the water, you have 45-degree cooling medium.
Right.
And so that makes a huge, huge difference.
And the other big difference is water has a lot more, they call it the latency of heat. And so if you take, let's say it's not even ice water, let's say it's 80-degree water and you heat it up to 100, you add 20 degrees to the water going through that intercooler, that'd be the same as, 300 miles per hour of air speed through your air cooler. Just air isn't that dense, so it can't pull that much heat out before the air gets as hot as what it's cooling off. I'm talking the air going through, not the boost.
Yeah,
going through the
I
other
believe
side.
when I was researching this years ago, the rule of thumb is that the water removes 14 times more heat than air. That's why your water to air intercoolers are oftentimes much smaller. The cores are much smaller than an air to air because the water removes so much more heat than air ever could. And so that is a nice thing. Is packaging wise, maybe you could fit a smaller cooler in. When I was sizing them for the Godfather, I put 2 giant ones in. And I called Bell Intercooler and had them custom made for me. And he said, how much CFM or pounds a minute or whatever. And I had all the calcs for him. He's like, okay. And so he made me 2 giant coolers and
they were big. They were heavy.
Yeah. Well, I said I need him to withstand. I think I spec'd out 165 pounds of boost because that's what but they've seen more than that. At least the high pressure one has. Low pressure one never has, but the high pressure one's been well over 165. So,
I just saw a video like Steve Morris Race Engines put up, and they're testing a land speed racing methanol car with a water to air intercooler. And normally they don't intercool methanol because it cools so much. Well, he said normally with that turbo setup, they get about 30 pounds of boost has right about 300 degrees of discharge temp, just rough rule of thumb. And so he says normally the methanol is cooling off 300 degrees. Well, since they're going through this intercooler, it was dropping it down to 70 degrees or whatever, going from 30 to 70 at around that 30. I think they're at 3,500 horsepower. He said they were up 200 to 300 horsepower at the same boost level as they normally would. And he was like, dude, I am blown away. But I mean, it's just simple math and physics.
It is.
But it shows you how effective, even with like the most radical cooling fuel out there, put that intercooler in there and drop it from 300 to 80 in it.
When I did calculations back in the day, I mean, I didn't physically know it from experience, but the math showed me with the amount of pressure we're running in these compound sets, like 150, 200 PSI, the intercooler itself can add as much density as the turbocharger does. And so it's like, I mean, it's so much density. Like I'm like, literally it's like putting another turbo in there. I mean, turbos multiply density. That's what they do. That's their job.
Right.
And if you got good enough intercoolers, all of a sudden, okay, then that changes the size of your turbocharger. Now I have a turbo going into an intercooler, which is like another turbo. It's like a compound turbo. That means I have to draw more CFM from the turbo feeding it. So all of a sudden now, using that intercooler system, that's when I mathed out, I need 2 GT55s. And this is the time everybody thought I was an idiot. Like, dude, you will never spool 2 GT55s. Like, it's never going to happen. Like, no, I mean, at the time people were thinking one was big. I'm like, I think I should do 2 with this, And sure enough, it spooled up no problem, made good power, is awesome. So yeah.
So if you had 2 intercoolers and 3 turbos, you basically had 5 stages of compression. So these guys saying that Whistling Diesel set the world on fire with 17 turbos, I think they weren't compounded at all.
Just
so you
one
only
stage.
had 1 stage. You had 5 stages going. I mean, it's a big
it's only
deal.
4 because the 2 turbos were at one.
Yeah.
So I had atmosphere,
4 stages of
intercooler,
compression.
then I had my other turbo and then the aftercooler. So I had 4 stages, and each one of those added as much density as every stage together. So
I think a jet turbine engine has like 7 stages. So we're still a little
we're
wary
still
behind
behind.
aerospace.
Got a few more to go.
We got about 3 more stages to put in there.
Time for time for some more turbos on a truck. Is that what you're trying to say?
Which I mean, talking about like air to air versus water to air, like the efficiencies of it. It's like water to air is so much, like you're saying, you can put like ice in the tank, but even if you don't, even if you're starting with the same, 80-degree water versus 80-degree atmosphere temperature, water is so much better at getting that temperature down. Like I was doing again data logging on my race truck, and I had a Mishimoto on there. A Mishimoto 2nd gen intercooler, and it made about like 100 or it was like 94 pounds of boost. And I hooked up all the pressure sensors, and I come to find out it was making 94 after the intercooler, but it was making like 118 or 108 before.
Oh, wow.
So it had a 14.5 PSI drop. I always thought that Mishimoto was great because my intake air temps at the end of a pass was like 110 degrees, like full on power, making 100 pounds of boost and cooling it down to 110 degrees by the end of the pull. Like I thought, oh wow, this thing's really good. Well, no, I'm losing 14 pounds of pressure to do it. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to make this super intercooler. I thought about water to air, but then like saying complexity, weight, all that stuff. I was like, I don't want to get the truck to that level yet. I want it to be simple. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make this massive air to air. I used a on-3, like a lot of people use an on-3 intercooler core. All like your UCC trucks, a lot. It's a very common core to see people use.
Pretty big.
And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna one up this. I have room. I'm gonna put 2 of them in there. So I made my own end tanks. It's a 24 by 24 by 5-inch core. Like it's a thick
awesome.
girl.
Massive.
Like it got nicknamed Big Bertha. And I put it on the truck, and I did a dyno pull, and I have 2.5 PSI drop now. I was like, oh heck yeah, dude! I'm gonna pick up so much power. Take it to the drag strip, and I changed some other things between the 2 races, so I can't really compare. But now my intake temps are 200 and some degrees at the end of a pull, and it could
At the end
be,
of like a drag strip pass.
end of like it's 7, 6, whatever second drag strip pass. And so I gained a lot of pressure. Like now I do make more boost at the head, but I also lost temperature. And I haven't actually I need to sit down and do the math of seeing if I net positive or not. I don't really want to because I still want to be proud of it.
Is it
but
actually more dense?
And I'm like, dude, if I did a water to air, I could do half the size of a cooler. And I mean, you can get down to atmosphere temperatures, no problem.
Yep.
I mean, you talk about all the boosts you're making. You're feeding that engine 220 pounds of boost at 70 degrees or 80, whatever it was.
I mean, one little nitrous jet though, I've seen they've data logged out. It's -50. So 50 below zero is what nitrous is
When
coming
you-
out when it's vaporizing.
But
So
when you have enough air, like I've been shocked because I have on the Cummins card, I have a temperature probe right after my nitrous jet.
It's like I'm looking at it. It's 2 inches away.
It's 2 inches away. And when I run the nitrous, you can barely see it in the temperature. I think there's so
much volume.
So much volume. I mean, I don't run near the nitrous people do. I'm not, so I mean, obviously it's all percentage. My nitrous is pretty small, but I was actually quite shocked. You're gonna need a lot of nitrous to cool that off, which there you can, and people do, but you definitely need a lot.
Just need to waterboard your engine with nitrous is what I'm hearing. That fixes it all.
Fixes all
Fixes
your problems.
something. May cause some other problems.
Yeah. So as far as efficiency, like air to air is awesome because how simple it is. You don't have to maintain it. You don't have to do a dang thing. You just, put a fan on it. If it gets warm, you're good to go again. Water to air is so much more effective. And I love simplicity, especially in a race truck.
Yeah.
I'm on the fence if I want to just do water to air.
Oh, I go back and forth with the Cummins cart because I do believe with this. I have, like, you have the 2 cores. I have 1 core. Same core as you have. You've got 2. I've got 1. And I know my temps are quite hot after the intercooler. I mean, I'm sure I'm 400 degree air going into the engine, and so I got to fix that. And but it fits and it's nice. But
it's simple, and it doesn't have a bunch of water pumps and a water tank.
And it melted a turbine wheel because it was so hot.
Yeah, it's like you have so many. There's 2 sides of that. It's weight and all the other problems.
I
you
know.
run into.
I do go back and forth, and I'm not going to do anything this season, but it is hard because I do know I'm leaving probably hundreds of horsepower on the table with the turbo system I have and the fuel system I have going through my intercooler that I'm using. Something I think about a lot. So yeah, I'm a big fan of water to air, but just realize it comes with a cost. Complexity, system, size, maintenance, broken core. I broke an intercooler core UCC1. We tried racing, and then even this past year, John Schroeder, he's having that same, or last year in Montana, he's like, what do you think is wrong? He's going all over. I'm like, dude, I think you got a broken intercooler core because it's the exact same thing happened to me. Found out he had broken intercooler core. How's it happen? Water freezes. So if
don't drain it all out. You don't leave it in the trailer or whatever.
Yeah. So he had a broken intercooler core. And they're expensive to fix. So
big bucks.
So yeah, they're definitely come with a cost. So just be aware what you're getting into. Last myth then of this episode.
Man, this went along a lot longer than I thought.
Yeah. There's more myths. If this is
there's
interesting,
so many more, yeah.
if this is interesting to people, you let us know. We'll do this again. There's lots more myths. But for this episode, we got one more. The myth is this: upgrading your diesel power performance upgrades always result in worse fuel economy. Is that a myth or is that true?
I think it depends on the driver a little bit. If you are immature,
if you are 6'8"
and it's your first time experiencing power, you're gonna use it. If you use power everywhere, it will get less fuel economy because if you
little known fact, when you give that skinny pedal more travel, you put more fuel in your engine. That's how that works.
Pretty simple.
But let's break this down. Just the economy of the engine itself. Like if it's driven the same, it's not hot rodded more or whatever. I think that a lot of performance mods increase efficiency of the engine.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's awesome for us in the aftermarket because we're not held to the same, like we don't have to follow the stringent things that Dodge cared about when they put this whole thing together. And so there's a lot of easy things to unlock just by doing some simple stuff. I mean, you can take your 200 horse engine, get up to 400 horse and pick up a mile or 2 miles a gallon, no problem. Like that Project Farm, he left with 500 and some horse, and he got like, what was it, 1 or 1.5 miles per gallon better.
Might have been 1.8 or something, but
on the way back,
and he had to go up. He was coming. He went down. I mean, there's ups and downs all the way from there, but it was more up going back to him, and so he picked up mileage by doing that.
Yeah.
And so I think it depends on it, and that we get that a lot when guys are asking. They're like, "Well, when am I going to get better fuel mileage?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's all dependent upon your foot because at the end of the day, you can get better fuel mileage if you drive it very similar to what you are. But if you went and picked that hill that you always wanted to tow up at 75 miles an hour, that you could only do 40 miles an hour up, and now you do 75 miles an hour up that hill, all your fuel economy you just picked up, you lost going up that hill. Like it's all dependent on how much fuel you're pushing, and it's not all of it.
So let's talk about where the efficiency gains come from. So you put a ported head on something, there's less pumping losses. The turbo doesn't have to make as much boost, so therefore it doesn't have
it's an air pump.
It's less. A turbo is more efficient making a little bit less boost. I mean, it's not super efficient at 1 pound of boost,
Right.
but it's more efficient, cruising down the road, pulling a
10,
trailer
15.
at 15 pounds than it is at 25 pounds.
Right.
Then the efficiency gain of not pushing stuff out the exhaust track, you get a restrictive turbo.
Mhm.
There's a cork in there. You get all the factory exhaust. There's a cork in there. So letting that breathe better, you're getting efficiency gains there. And then what Myra's talking about, talking about timing, right?
Yeah, timing and all that stuff. Getting that fuel in there sooner so it can burn more thoroughly. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, and I think that's a common problem that people think is that if you're going to put power into these trucks, is that you're really going to kill fuel mileage, and really, I don't even know where the level would be really where you're going to kill it. Like I mean,
I think you're going to kill mileage more with big tires than you are making 1,000 horse.
I mean,
like
tires
Tom
with
Rail.
kit.
you look at Ruby, and Ruby has got the same
terrible
mileage.
mileage.
Yeah, but it's the same exact mileage.
It's the best now it's ever been, and I credit the gapless rings.
Well, and actually, tires have increased in size on his, and his mileage has pretty much stayed the same. So
Not better,
I think it has a lot to do with driving styles more than it has to do performance upgrades. And I mean, Ruby's really the extreme, I would say, of these trucks. Like,
it's extreme for a very fun daily driver. But I think about Josh, he going cross country when he drove out to Firepunk to use their dyno and compare ours to theirs. And he had
was he single or was he with compounds at that time?
I don't remember.
Because I know 480s, Josh used to.
He had a big set of compounds on there, and it was bigger than Todd's.
Yeah,
and even bigger injectors.
1,700 horsepower somewhere in there.
Yeah,
That's
it was like
kinda
a-
what I remember.
Yeah,
So probably like a
1660, I think is what he did.
Yeah.
But
Like
yeah,
a 480, probably on the manifold.
It was a 476.
dude, I don't remember.
I don't remember.
It was big.
It was good.
I know he's
More than
he has
Ruby.
a lot of data from with a 480 GT55, but he got like 20 some. Yeah, I know for a fact in Virginia he drove it to Tennessee just after KOS because like why not? And 480 GT55 he got like 20 some miles a gallon with his 300% overs and everything else. It's like it's hugely how you drive, but also like
He
your
is
tuning
much
and everything
better
goes.
at controlling
he
his
is.
speed than I ever was. He's good. He's smart. He plays it smart.
He always complains when he used to like caravan with us. He's like, geez, you guys race into the track? And we're just like,
He's like, why don't you
Just
just leave on
driving
time?
normal.
Try that.
But yeah, I mean,
He's got a
'cause
point.
Josh used to, when he had a single 480 on his truck for a long time, he used to calculate 25 miles of the gallon. Now I'm assuming that has a lot to do with he has a big turbine, and so he was able to get rid of a lot of drive pressure.
Yeah.
And
And
when
you
you're
can never do
just
that on a 12 valve where you
Yeah.
needed the
No.
boost.
Yeah,
But on
yeah.
a 6.7 where in flat ground where you don't really need the boost, and
Yeah.
so it's just doing its thing.
if you go crazy big on the injectors on a 12 valve, I'm talking like sled pull, drag race only, they haze, they're not as efficient. And so I think at a light load cruising, lower boost, you will get poor fuel economy,
Yeah.
really big injectors. The timing though, if you add timing to an engine and don't change the fuel and you pick up power, your efficiency went up.
Right.
There's no other,
Yeah.
like if you're making more power with the same amount of fuel, it's going to get better fuel mileage, which is kind of what you're doing when you're bumping up the timing.
Yeah, and I guess 12 valves would be a kind of an accept. You get into a mechanical pump and you're a little bit different on what you have to do for injector sizing.
Mhm.
But it's one of those that, like, if you went to the junker, do you really think the junker would get worse fuel mileage at the 998 than
I'll
it did?
bet it would get well over 20 right now if you
Yeah.
actually kept your foot out of it and
Drove it how you were with the small injectors we're running in it.
So
Mm.
actually, I'm gonna hijack this conversation because this is kind of where it went. But this will be really quick before we have to go. The last thing I want to talk about is, are bigger injectors always better? No.
No, definitely not.
We've like in common rail world, it's pretty well known. You want to size it, whatever, blah blah blah. 12 valve world, it seems like everyone just thinks like you want to make more power, you need to throw a bigger injector on there. Countless times we've put a smaller injector on the truck and picked up power. Just because in a 12 valve, you're controlling your rail pressure, your injection pressure based on a couple factors, but one is the nozzle size.
Yep.
And so if you make your nozzle smaller, you're making a higher pressure, you're optimizing that air better, and it's a more efficient burn. Now, if you have like these massive air setup, massive turbos, and you can get a little bit more inefficient fuel in there with a bigger injector, you'll pick up power. But if you have like a well-rounded setup where it's not like completely lopsided, yeah, absolutely. Smaller injectors
and
make
the
more power.
larger injectors, I think also you're talking about your rail pressure, like the 12 valve pressure has with your pump element size.
Mhm.
So I run big injectors and it comes car, but I also have a 14 millimeter plunger.
Oh yeah.
So I keep my pressure high. I mean, if I put these same injectors in like Uncle Rico's 12 mil plunger,
It'd break the pump for one, and then
Right.
two.
Yeah. It'd be
But
dirtier.
until it broke the pump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's saying your and his injectors in your pump.
Oh, I
So
thought you
the
said
big-
my
no.
injectors and yours.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. That's also a bad idea.
Also
Uh,
bad.
They're saying these like small injectors.
No,
in
but
the
putting
race
big,
pump.
huge injectors on a pump that's not designed for that kind of volume,
Yeah,
is
it would
also
be
a-
smoky, hazy,
you
slobber.
have lower pop. Your pressure's getting out. It's gonna be very small. Where I have this big plunger to push it through at a higher, higher pressure, not like common oil pressure, but
Yeah.
appropriate P pump pressures.
The same is true in the past. They found we're playing with VP44s. You get too big of an injector, and they will start losing power. However, when they were in dyno competitions back, when guys were trying to break 800, high sevens, 800 horse with a VP, the guys with nitrous would pick up more power with the big slobbery
Yeah.
injector with the nitrous, that accelerant in there. But fuel only, a
Yeah.
slightly smaller injector was making more power than the biggest offerings at the time. So
And I think we've seen that in the 12 valve world for
huge.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Junker is a good example of that. Is we went and put bigger injectors into it when we were doing that testing and lost horsepower.
Lost like 30 horse. And
Yeah.
we didn't even put a massive injector in there.
No,
Or like that triple turbo giveaway. We had like,
Yeah.
I think there were 5x20s or whatever else. And we just bopped it down to a 5x18 and we picked up power there. It's just like, if you have extra fuel, like you're smoking a little bit at full power, you got extra fuel. If you can pull some of that fuel back with a smaller injector, but inject it more efficiently to where it can burn better, you will net positive. Now, super clean, your nitrous, whatever. Yeah, a little bit extra fuel. If it can burn, you might make more power with that. But fuel only setups.
But
Yeah.
there is, like in everything, there is an appropriate, balance between injector size and fuel delivery. Like,
Yeah.
you need to kind of get your injectors right with what you're doing.
Yep.
Lenny from DDP always preaches 1800 microseconds on the common rail side. If you need more than 1800 microseconds, you need a bigger injector.
Mm-hmm.
Now you may or may not agree with that, as I am beyond 1800 and you're probably beyond 1800.
Kind of. Yeah.
So, but that's a pretty good rule of thumb. It's just, I'm kind of maximum. I'm not well beyond that, but I'm a little bit beyond that. My 1500 horsepower tune, and so same with the P pump. Size your injector to your pump, and common rail size
your
your
goals,
injector to your goals. And there is too small and there is too big. There really is a happy spot. You need to find it.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, guys, I think that's going to wrap up this episode today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you want us to, address further myths, first of all, send us your questions. We'll address them.
Yep.
And I had fun talking about this stuff today. So
Got more heat than I was expecting.
you are wrong.
I was hoping we'd talk about aliens and Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster, and all we talked about was 12
We're
hours.
talking about myth busting
fuel
and Will got
economy.
so excited.
Yes. Sorry. Maybe next time. The
He's
next
got
time
some
we-
crappy pixelated video of Bigfoot you wanted to share.
That's right. So anyway,
I'd almost say in comments is what other podcasts do you guys want us to
yeah.
do?
Let us know.
Like, we'd love to know what other podcasts that you guys are wanting to hear from all of us. And if you want different people in it, or who have you seen? What do you want? Like, that's a good idea for us. We're always looking for podcast ideas. This is something we sit around and kind of talk about.
Around the
and,
round table, yeah.
And we're at a round table trying to figure it out. And so if you guys go, hey, we want to hear about this podcast, we are always taking suggestions.
Absolutely. So anyway, guys, thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next time on the Power Driven Podcast.